politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and politics of compassion
But America,
and love are right.
we are not going back.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Raised Red Living Blue podcast. We've got a special guest today, a very prominent Alabama content creator from a very popular TikTok channel, Alabama Disgrace. Leisha, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
You drove over an hour to be here. You know, we are unpaid protesters. George Soros is not cutting us a check.
He is not.
We are volunteering our time to be here. And I wanted to kind of start this episode around that. Like, what are you doing here? What are you doing in this role? How did Alabama Disgrace get created?
So, living in a community with very few left-leaning people, it felt a bit isolating. There was not anybody I could really conversate with about what was happening in our world, in the state. So I created a TikTok so that I could just air my grievances with whoever would listen. One of the first videos I did was me telling people that I thought Alabama needed a conglomeration of Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, and Gavin Newsom to be our governor here in Alabama. And one of the comments I got was from a gentleman named Bubba. And he told me that I was a disgrace to the state of Alabama. And someone else commented on that and said, you know what, that would be a great username. And I said, you are absolutely right. And that's how it happened.
I love it.
Because I am quite the disgrace to the standards of Alabama. Most people in Alabama kind of align themselves with tradition here, and tradition is nothing but dead people telling you what to do, and I am not a conformist. So most people would consider my views on a lot of things disgraceful.
Well, I'm going to give people a little insight on your background. So you don't have a raised red living blue story. You know, you weren't raised Republican or in a Republican household or even in a political household.
No. For the most part, politics was not discussed when I was growing up. Living in Georgia, I grew up in Atlanta, and it was not until I moved to Alabama, and not even initially when I moved to Alabama, it was when I became part of a community in Alabama, which was a predominant white, very Christian community. That's when politics started to be a thing. And there was a period where I was a practicing Christian. I am not any longer. And being in that community and constantly surrounded with Christian ideology and conservatism, none of us are immune from manipulation. Let me say that. And so it kind of slowly started to infiltrate me. Because at the time, I didn't have the education I have now. I was unaware of indoctrination and programming and red flags and all that stuff. So I fell right in line. That's how I was a Christian for 3 years. And that would have been the only time in my life that I would have said I'm a conservative. The entire time of my life before that and afterward, I have been a left-leaning person. I've voted Democrat more times than I've voted Republican.
Are you saying that this church you're a part of, politics was very prominent in the conversations, or?
Not necessarily in the church, but just with the members of the church. You know, their Facebook posts and their conversations, you know, we vote Republican. And it just kind of was a known thing.
Yeah.
I don't recall there ever being a time when the pastor said, you know, vote Donald Trump from the pulpit or anything like that. It was just kind of the members of the church. And at that time, probably only time in my life, I was conforming to groupthink mentality and kind of fell right in line with it.
So fell in line with like some of the ideology and some of the beliefs?
The conservatism. Yes.
Really? Wow.
Yep. and I can't think of any specific off the top of my head, but overall conservatism, like traditional households and abortion is awful and the LGBTQ plus community, that was not how you were supposed to live and things like that.
And so you believed some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, it's interesting too because you're so outspoken.
Well, let me say, when I say I believed some of that, I aligned with conservative views.
Yeah.
So I was a youth pastor for a 2-year period.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And I actually spoke about this the other day on TikTok, but my message to the youth, to the teenagers, was that we are to love people. We are to take care of the least of these. I actually followed the teachings of Jesus, the words of Jesus.
Right.
And so even though I'm an atheist now, I still hold his words in high regard, just like I would the words of Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Aristotle and Socrates. I take the good still, but even when I was a part of the church, I never taught hate or division or exclusion or any of that stuff. It was just, we're supposed to love people. And that has not changed. That's always been who I am. And so what's going on now has deeply disturbed me. The hate that you see coming from people.
Wow, that's interesting. There was an event, I'm guessing, that sparked your kind of starting to back away from the church?
So when I lost my daughter, my 21-year-old daughter, tragically in 2016, that was the period when I stepped away from the church to grieve. Well, it wasn't long after I lost her. In the beginning, the church was supportive. Mm-hmm. They were. But it wasn't long, maybe a month or so, that the pastor was calling me and telling me to come back to work, that they needed me back at work. And I'm like, I'm barely breathing most days. I don't eat. I am destroyed as a person. So that kind of started it just put a crack in things. And then I realized the church slowly drifted away because I couldn't be on their turf. I couldn't come to them. And so that was another crack. It's like, wow, y'all really aren't what you say you are, So some cracks slowly started happening. And then I can remember lying on the floor of my bedroom, pleading with this God that I believed in at the time to please send me some sort of sign or something to let me know my child is okay and that I'll see her again. I got nothing. It was dead silent. And so I started realizing that the only time I felt God was when I was in the church, when the lights were just right, when the music was just right, which it's designed to be that way. We know music is a very big motivator of emotions, so it's all designed as that way, to be that way. And so I'm starting to get all these cracks. And so then in 2017, 2018, I decided I was going to go back to college. I wanted to get my degree in honor of my daughter. She had left college to go into the Air Force. And while she was in the Air Force, she was finishing her degree. And so it was just a way that I was compelled to honor her, to get this degree for her.
I love that.
So I did. And while I was in college getting my BS in psychology.
You were indoctrinated by the leftists?
Yes, they took me over. I got educated on the truth of social injustices and the systemic racism. And I learned all about all the religions and the stories of Christ-like figures long before Jesus ever popped on the scene, And when I started, it was Western civilization, actually. When I took that class, the faith, any sort of faith, was just demolished.
Yeah. It's interesting. We've had it's a journey I've been on too, away from religion, and it's a common theme among people that come on this show. It's something has happened to them.
Yeah.
We've had a former pastor on a number of times, and man, the stories he tells, it's unbelievable. I would imagine you would get a little maybe rubbed a wrong way by some of the, even before this, by some of the comments that may have been made in your presence? Like, where you were in the church, or did you recognize it or not recognize it at that time? Like, if somebody would say something racist, or
I was
maybe
actually having this conversation with a coworker of mine just yesterday. She's like, Leisha, how'd you get here? Because she's watched my journey, you know. At one time, I'm telling her, I bought her a Bible, okay? Yes, and wrote an inscription in there for her. Oh, just to think about it, it's like, who the hell was that? So she's watched this journey, and now she watches me as a social justice advocate, and she's like, Leisha, how'd you get here? There was a time I was not a racist by any stretch of the imagination, but I was indifferent to racism and social injustice because I lived in a white world.
right.
I was just dumb about it, you know, and until you're exposed to it and the truth and what this country was built on, you don't know. I've actually talked about that before. When I say that people are dumb about racism, the systemic racism that is still alive and well in this country, they are ignorant. They are dumb because they've never been taught the truth, the true history that's purposely omitted from our textbooks, and they're not exposed to real life of people of color.
I'm curious, like, how the black women in your office, your coworkers, are feeling about Trump's recent remarks about how white people were mistreated during the civil rights movement.
So, and me and some of my coworkers have had this conversation. They are this is nothing new. She said, well, one of them in particular, this has been our whole life. So they don't react for the most part. You know, when every day is a struggle for equality, one stupid ass moron like Donald Trump making comments like that is not going to set them off because this has been their existence.
Yeah.
So they're pretty much just living their life, understandably.
Yeah. Well, the degree you got was in psychology?
Yes.
And I promise we're going to get to these questions in a minute.
I like the talking.
What did this degree, how did that open your eyes to the type of person Donald Trump is at his core?
So when you study psychology, and there's another story to go along with that, you know, I learned about personality disorders, narcissism, malignant, covert, whichever type. But when you're learning about it, and then at the same time, I was dating someone who was a malignant narcissist. You can't make this stuff up. So I'm learning about the personality disorders and the signs of someone who's got narcissism. And then I'm leaving work and encountering it in real life about how destructive these people are. They thrive on chaos. They don't have a soul. They don't have an identity. So they feed off that of other people, and they will suck the life out of you. If we look at who Marco Rubio, for example, who he was back in 2016, 17, 18, very lively, you know, passionate type person. Watch an interview of his now.
It's very subdued.
He's a shell of himself.
Yeah.
That's what malignant narcissism does to people. I can remember this person that I was dating literally trying to stop me from finishing college. I remember I was taking biology at the time, of all things, and every day was just such a chaotic, destructive, like just making up things to argue about, and he would attack my character. You're gonna die when I tell you this. He told me one time out of his mouth, I don't know how you have time to do anything else with all those fucking books you read. And I'm like, God forbid me wanting to learn anything, but that's just the type of people they are. They want to attack any good thing about you. The night before my youngest daughter's wedding, I'm emotional because her sister's not going to be there. And he told me, I'm going upstairs. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you cry. You act like you're the only person who's lost a child. They are cold-hearted, manipulative, abusive, destructive people. So while I was in college learning all that, as soon as he popped on the scene to run again. So let me preface by saying during 16, his first term, I was very much a zombie because of the loss of my child. I was not paying attention to politics. I didn't give a shit who the president was. I didn't even give a shit if there was a country. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
And so his second term, as soon as he popped on the scene, I'm like, oh, hell, this is going to be so bad because I'm seeing the traits, especially now that I've got the education and I know what I'm looking for. And it was just red flag after red flag after red flag. So, and when I would try to talk to people about who he is and what he is and the destruction that these type of people cause, it was very brushed off. Nobody would listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he's Republican, he's our guy, you know, God sent him and just all this other crazy shit.
Yeah, he was ordained.
Oh my God. So yeah, that's how I knew what Donald Trump was.
Hey fellow Blue Dots, we would love for you to connect with us on social media. We're on Instagram and TikTok at Raised Red Living Blue. Okay, back to the episode.
So fast forward, roughly when did you create this TikTok account? And
so for a while, so he was elected November of 24. And as I was telling you earlier, the day after the election, I woke up in the middle of the night and I just knew that Kamala had lost. And I've got a picture of me in my blue dress and my I voted sticker. And I was so proud that day to walk up in that very red Republican volunteer fire department to cast. I wanted them all to know.
You probably got some stank eyes in that blue dress.
I did. But it was, you know, I wanted them to know that not everybody is like y'all.
Right.
And so, but I woke up in the middle of the night the next day and I just knew. And I was just so devastated. And I told my husband that when I realized that, you know, she had indeed lost, that this was going to be very, very bad. And I cried for a solid week. My coworkers was like, girl, pull it together. Shit, this is not how we handle things, you know? They're over here, we're used to this shit, and I'm over here dying on the inside. It was insane, but I was so brokenhearted because I knew how bad it was going to be. And even my husband told me, he was like, I really did not think it was going to be as bad as you were making it out to be. And he's like, look at where we are now. And I was like, I know, I tried to tell people. So about, I don't know, it was probably around December, I created a TikTok. And I was just looking for like-minded people to listen to because I felt isolated in the community that I live in. I didn't have anybody to do this with. It was I'm a lone wolf, but that felt lonely.
Yeah.
I was a voyeur for a bit on TikTok. Well, I'm a talker, obviously, and eventually my opinions had to be told. Somebody needed to hear what the hell I had to say.
Yeah.
I needed to air my grievances, and so I started posting a couple months after that. I'm not sure exactly when it was, and that's how we got. Here we are.
And it just took off.
It really did.
Yeah.
It really did. And I honestly believe it's because there are so many out there like me who just needed to see somebody stand the fuck up and speak out and tell the truth. You know, when people see someone do it, it makes them feel brave and it gives them the courage. And so people are like, yes, you know, and so that's why I think it grew like it did as fast as it did.
Well, people, I mean, to see you as a woman, as a Southern woman, you know, to hear your accent, you know, it's like,
oh gosh, like cornbread.
She sounds like me and she thinks like me.
Yeah, like I said, it makes people feel not so alone. Just like the video I did the other day where I was just like calling people in, like wherever you are, let people know that they are not alone, and there's more than just one of you, and get together and organize and start building the community, the coalition together, wherever you are. And it was thousands of people, thousands of blue dots all over Alabama. People just needed a light, maybe some direction, and I'm proud to do it. I was proud to do it because people need to know they're not alone, and they're not batshit crazy and evil, and we're not demons, and we really, really just want the best for all people.
We love our country.
We do. I love America. I love it here. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. You know, it's easy to hop on a plane and get the hell out of here, but I love what I was raised to believe that being an American was. Now, I've learned a lot about America is not good. You know, our history is not good. This country was founded on abusing and oppressing Black people and what they did to the Native American. You know, we weren't taught the truth about America and all the systems that are in place here. And so I had an ideological view of what it was to be an American. And so if I can do a little bit to make that reality, then that's what I'm going to do.
All right, so I reached out to you for an interview, and typically when I do this, you know, we're talking about like, hey, what's the theme of the podcast, or what are the main, you know, talking points you kind of want to go over. It didn't take you long to come up with yours.
No.
And you were like, you know, you're like, oh yeah, this is it. There's so much out there like to take on. What about this theme of the Southern Republican female voter just really gripes your ass?
The number one thing is the betrayal of themselves. It is watching these women abandon themselves, vote against their own interest, hurt their fellow woman. You know, and they uphold the patriarchy. White women do. If they stopped supporting it, it would disappear. So I hold them responsible. And a lot of it is due to lack of education, lack of self-awareness, lack of truth and reality. And because I am a white Southern woman, you know, and I lived in that world for a bit of period.
Yeah.
I know where they're at, but I also know where they can be. And it can be in a place where they're advocating for their self, for their fellow women, the people of color, and other marginalized groups. Like they don't hold power in the sense of the patriarchy and of men, but they hold power in upholding the patriarchy, which in turn oppresses so many groups. So that's why that issue is important to me.
Well, there's several groups that baffle me. Obviously, women are the largest one. I thought, like, I was certain that women were going to make the difference in the 2024 election.
Me too.
I thought, man, all the stuff they're seeing.
They did, just not in the right way.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, man, you know, when he was attacking Kamala, you know, just the nastiness, but, you know, is she black? Is she, you know, like all that. I was like, man, he is just digging his grave. And it didn't turn out to be the case. And I'm just so, like, baffled by that. I'm baffled by the misogyny I see from some of these women in the statements they make.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think if I've done this yet or not, but I had a woman comment on a post I made on Facebook. She was making a joke. She was like, if you know, she posted a meme about driving through a crowd of protesters and just bumping them up, then bouncing off the side of her car, bouncing off her windshield. And I made a comment about, like, because I like to look at their social media profile, their Facebook page, and I'm like, this woman's clearly a Christian woman. Like, she's a big active member of her church. So I commented, I was like, how is this Christian? She goes, I'll be praying for them as they're bouncing off the hood of my car. That's what she said. But, you know, I think it's the members of the LGBTQ plus community that are MAGA that freak me out the most. But it's
It
like
is bizarre to me as well.
the Latinos for Trump, the women
Black
for
people,
Trump, black people
yes.
for Trump. You know, I know this guy that's running for governor in Florida, endorsed by Trump, black man. He's a really disgusting person. He really makes me unhinged when I see him talk on camera. But, you know, it's a power thing for him, obviously. You know, he just wants to be governor. He wants to be somebody, you know?
It's the same issue with white women. It's this proximity to power or perceived power. But the patriarchy is white men. As long as it exists, women and people of color and the LGBTQ community will not have power. I don't care how you perceive it, you will not. So it is baffling to see these other groups who are oppressed by the patriarchy support someone like Donald Trump. But as I said earlier, none of us are immune from manipulation.
Right.
So.
And the tactics they're using are out of a proven playbook.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, they've been using them for generations.
Yeah.
Same thing. Religion, you know, that's a number one tactic. You get them with religion and you've pretty much got them hooked.
well, yeah, so religion maybe is the original cult, you know? Like that's...
It is a cult. It is a cult. It is a cult.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Well, do you feel like... I often wonder how many women out there are doing what we have done for long periods of time in our lives of like stay silent, kind of stay in the closet, bite our tongue. Do you feel like they're just don't want to speak out against their husbands? Are they kind of being, is this an obedience thing?
So it's multifaceted.
Okay.
In the South, especially, women are raised pretty much from birth to be male-centered. Everything is about getting and keeping a man.
Yeah.
You know, I know very few people that did not get married and have children right out of high school. And even if they didn't, it was a goal. You're supposed to get married and you're supposed to have kids. And you're programmed with that from a very young age as a woman here. And then when you add religion into it, they are programmed to submit to authority. They are programmed that a man runs things, whether it's God, Jesus, your daddy, your grandpappy, or your husband. You submit to a man. And so when that's been your programming your entire life, you're going to submit to someone like Donald Trump. You're going to submit to authority because you've been taught that is your role. So no, they're not going to, until they have an awakening or get education, they think it's normal because it has been normal their whole life.
Well, what's the problem with women voting Republican? What are they doing when they do that?
So when women vote Republican, you know, we hear the term all the time, vote against your own interest. Mm-hmm. And when I say that about women, I'm not saying that to demean or attack anyone. I'm saying that because it is a fact. Reproductive freedom is not just about abortion like the Republicans like to obsess over. It's like abortion because they think they're the morality police, and they have proven to us by their ignoring Donald Trump's blatant immorality that they don't have real good discernment on what is moral and what is not. So the word abortion, it wasn't even an issue in the church or with the Republican Party until blatant racism could no longer be used. When people couldn't be openly racist,
that's fascinating.
That's when the term abortion became a calling card for the Republicans, and they started using it to grow their base. So reproductive freedom is not just about abortion. It is about educational attainment. It is about a better economic situation, freedom. It is about less stress, less anxiety, better overall health. Because let me ask you, as a man, can you imagine the government dictating what you can and cannot do with your body?
Well, I made this joke online the other day. I stole it from somebody else, but I saw somebody make a comment about, well, let's start requiring men to get vasectomies. Yeah. And I was like, that's so true.
Yes. Why? But it always falls on the responsibility of women, to the point that the government steps in and makes laws to control us, because that's all that it's about. It's not about more morality. It is about domination and control.
That is I've just never thought of it that way, but it's so fascinating. It reminds me of some pictures that I've seen that have come out. It's protested in Montgomery at the state capitol, where people back in the civil rights movement holding signs that say integration is communism.
Yes.
So now we're back here with liberalism as
yes,
communism.
that was another calling card back then. Communism was the enemy. Socialism was the enemy. They make up a new enemy all the time.
For the purposes of control.
Yes, that is all it's about. Because if you really look at the definition of communism and socialism, it is not what the far right pushes it to be. So they've had different calling cards through the years. Racism was one, when they were still advocating for slavery to be legal. Then it became abortion, and then it became communism. And now it's those liberal libtards, or the Democrats, or whatever they call us. There's always or trans people.
Yeah, trans are the new enemy.
And one of my dear friends is a trans person, and so I'll always advocate for them as well. There's always a new enemy, because you've got to have somebody to be against, because you've got to keep your attention over there instead of looking at what these people are doing, the capitalists and stuff are doing, which is what pushes Republicans. They're capitalists. They're about money. That's why they're billionaires and trillionaires and things like that. But there's always got to be an enemy.
I also want the audience to understand that, you are speaking about this from a position of a person who at one time was against abortion when you were in the church, right? So have you kind of been on both sides of this mentally?
I would say that during the period that I was in the church, that those 3 years, I would say I was pro-life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now you see it as healthcare, or how do you see abortion?
I see it as a woman should have the choice to choose what is right for her body and her life, period.
Well, and we're seeing...
Because I don't want the government telling me what to do with my body or my life.
Well, and they're supposed to be the laissez-faire party. Government, small government, government hands off my body, hands off my pocketbook.
Republicans are we want limited, we want it's too big. The government's too big.
Government overreach.
Every time I turn around, though, they're trying to push it to be bigger and to rule our bodies as women, to rule our life, to rule our health care, to rule our pocketbooks. They want complete control over us for a reason. Because we uphold the patriarchy. You have to keep white women, especially, submissive, so that they will continue to uphold that and keep those white men in power.
But aren't women just the kind of people that people come out of?
The fuck? What?
I didn't know if you saw this interview with Pete Hegseth's pastor on 60
yes.
Minutes, where he said that.
I saw some clips of it.
Women are the kind of people that people come out of. Just basically, the reporter was asking him, his thoughts about women. Mm-hmm. Just in general.
We're subservient.
And that was his response.
Mm-hmm. Because they don't see us as a whole person. They don't see us as someone with our own ideas, our own goals, dreams, values, morals. They see us as an extension of them. And we should be servants to whatever they want, so they can remain in power.
You know, it reminds me, I've had conversations with Republican women about during the presidential race. And, you know, I've admitted on the show a number of times, I hope, if not, I'm going to do it, you know, for certain right now, that I was unhappy with Biden. I was unhappy with him on the border. I just didn't understand it. You know, here's what I understand, and I could be way off, is that he was trying to enforce immigration on a bipartisan basis. Mm-hmm. And so he wanted to do it through Congress, through legislation. He did not want to take
You mean like the legal
action. Way? Yeah. So, but when he took that executive action towards the end of his presidency and slowed the, you know, illegal immigration to a trickle, I was frustrated. I was frustrated with, you know, Kamala being the border czar, never being at the border. But I was mainly disappointed that he wasn't sticking to his guns as a one-term president. So I was looking at Nikki Haley. I was trying to keep an open mind about Nikki Haley. Did you try to keep an open mind about Nikki Haley?
During that time,
you were still
I was still not just in the political world. You know, I would hear things in passing, but I wasn't as involved and paying as close attention as I have in the last couple years. I didn't think Biden was a bad president. The thing about Biden, we were at peace. Our country was peaceful. And I'd take him back tomorrow. Okay, yeah. We can work on some of the other issues, but...
Just prop him up like Bernie and we can Bernie.
And that's one of the biggest problems. Why do we keep electing old men? Like, oh my God.
Well, and so here, bring back to this point I was going to make. I want to get your commentary on it. But this particular Republican woman who is now elected Republican herself in the Alabama State House told me that women are too moody.
Has anyone seen Donald Trump's completely unhinged bullshit every day on Truth Social? We're emotional?
Yeah.
That's called internalized misogyny. When you, as a woman...
And they've been told that, right? I mean, they've been conditioned.
Yes, it's been programming over the years that women are less than. Women are not as smart. Women can't lead. Women don't do good on math. You know, women are supposed to be at home taking care of the children. None of that is true. That is all complete bullshit. I am in a leadership position, and I do it fucking well.
Yeah.
I know lots of women. And here's the number one thing that blows my mind about that. It is a woman who runs her house, takes care of the children, works, makes sure that the homework's done, lets their husband know why he's going to the dentist, schedules the appointment. I mean, does everything, but will say a woman cannot lead. And I'm like, what are you doing? You do it.
Well, we can't have y'all near the nuclear codes during your time of the month.
Yeah, you know, we considering we're so moody.
I can't have somebody with menopause or perimenopause with their hand on the button.
Well, you know what? How about if we made women's health care a priority in this country, and in medicine, we could be treated appropriately and we wouldn't be considered hysterical. How about that?
Yeah.
Like women have...
All women are crazy, right?
Yes, we're unhinged as fuck. I happen to wear that label proudly, you know, that it just as a matter of fact, I was told yesterday, you're weird. I'm like, I like it. You know, I'm cool with it, whatever. Yeah. The argument that women are emotional is no longer valid as long as you support Donald Trump. Go to hell with that. That's ridiculous. And there's no science behind that women are more emotional. Men have emotions, but guess what? Our society makes men oppress their emotions. The only emotion that men are allowed to show is anger and rage.
Yeah.
Grief, sadness, disappointment, fear has to be suppressed because in this country, to be masculine, you can't show emotion. And so we end up with a bunch of toxic masculinity running around everywhere, and they think they've got to dominate everybody to feel powerful and valid. And just like that man Dale Jackson who tried to talk shit about me on TikTok.
I too am not a Dale Jackson fan, and Dale Jackson knows that.
He's not a good person. He made a 23-minute long video, 10 minutes of it bashing me because he doesn't like my opinions. He doesn't like that I have an opinion. He doesn't like that I show up in the world as authentically as I can. He thinks that women are supposed to be, shut the fuck up, sit down and be quiet in your corner and get back in the kitchen. He can go to hell with that.
Well, he is the inspiration for my version of Alabama Unfiltered. You know, him, 1819, a lot of the folks at Yellowhammer, some folks at AL.com. But literally, you can take an article of theirs or any piece of content and run it through AI and go, hey, fact check this for me.
Yep.
And it'll be, oh, misleading claim, no evidence, unsupported. And it's like, that is furthering the dumbification of Alabamians. I mean, it's irresponsible. I mean, so I just want to let these people know, like, hey, this content that you are
putting out as factual news
that people are sharing, that people are
AL.com does
believing.
it too.
Yeah, they do. You know, AL.com has some blue dot warriors that I'm a fan of, but yeah, I mean, it's all news outlets in Alabama are just putting out false information.
Yes, to keep the programming, to keep people in the herd, to keep the indoctrination going on, keep people voting Republican, keep Alabama at the bottom is what it does.
It's sad, and I'm fighting back.
We're fighting.
I made that
We're fighting back.
I made that decision. Well, what else are women? How else are they voting against their own interests in the state?
So when women continuously vote in Republican leaders, they are ignoring their own economic situation because in Alabama, women earn 77 cents to every dollar that a man makes. So there's still a gender wage gap. Then you look at women make up 50% of the population of this state. But when candidates, you know, they're campaigning and stuff, you never hear women-specific issues like the gender wage gap, like the need for affordable, quality child care so that women can be in the workforce, which would better their life economically and in turn better the entire economy. So when I say women are voting against their own interests, they are. Republicans are not going to fix the wage gap. They're not going to address the child care issues. They're not going to address workplace protections against sexual harassment. They never have. Why would we expect that they would do anything different now? Too many women don't pay attention because too many white women especially think that their proximity to power in their white privilege protects them. And so they ignore politics and vote against their own interest.
So it's like a safety mechanism in their brain somewhere?
They think it is. They think that because they support the men in their life who vote Republican, and in turn they also vote Republican, that it protects them. But I would love for any Republican woman, any white woman who votes Republican, to do a little experiment. Go and tell your husband or your partner, your boyfriend, whatever you want to call him, that you're going to vote Democratic. And see their response. See how protected and safe and supported and encouraged you feel. Because I can promise you that sense of safety that you've had will dissipate immediately because you're not obeying. You're not falling in line. You're doing your own thing, and that's not allowed. I would also encourage any woman who votes Republican to just take an analysis in your home and see what the balance of responsibility is. Who handles taking care of the children? Who handles the chores? Who makes sure that everything's organized? Who makes sure everybody gets where they gotta be? It's not balanced. There's no egalitarian relationship there. It falls on the women. So them continuously supporting the Republican Party and voting Republican because they think they have some sense of safety is again against their own interest. Because these men that they think that are going to protect them and keep them safe won't even fold the laundry. I'm so serious.
Well, what about, I bring this up often to women. I will question them when they make a ridiculous comment. You know, I will try to bring up, I've learned not to really bring up the things that Trump has been found guilty of because it's all bullshit, right? He's just being framed. It's a hoax.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. You know, none of it's true. But what I have found to be way more powerful is to bring up Project 2025 and say, hey, have you looked at this? Like, do you see there's something in there about you maybe losing your right to vote? And they'll go, oh, that's not in there. And so I'll just pull it up online and I'll just put the link in there and go, here's the link to it if you want to read it.
And I'm sure they say it's not true, that it's not reality. But yet, at any given moment of the day, you can get on TikTok or YouTube and you will see a man advocating for women's right to vote to be abolished. Every time we turn around, a woman's rights is going before the Supreme Court, is a new, right now, as we speak, in the legislative session in the state of Alabama is House Bill 118, which is to prevent women from being able to get the abortion pill. Why are our rights always on the chopping block? I don't know how they continuously ignore that fact. And like I said, it's not about abortion. It is about control. It is about power. And as long as these women keep voting Republican, they are stripping away their own rights. They are stripping away rights of their sisters of color. They are stripping away rights of other marginalized groups. Instead of being a unifier and bringing all the groups together that the patriarchy and the white nationalists who are in power keep trying to strip away from us, we'll always be second-class citizens. And how they're okay with it blows my mind. But I know the reason they're okay with it, because they ignore truth, because they think they're safe. They think they have some power, but at any given moment, a man will show you you have no power, and you are not safe, and you're not protected. The number of women that I know, and I was one of these women at one point, that self-abandoned and allowed men in their lives who were abusive, who verbally or physically, or men who cheated, or men who were blatant racists, or men that just were not supportive, good men, but they do it because they were brought up to be male-centered. And as long as I got a man, you know, fuck my needs. It is so sad to me, the number of women that I see that think their value and worth come from having a man. That more little girl, my granddaughters, I bought my granddaughter a book about what can she be when she grows up. You know, all the different careers that a woman can have, because I want my granddaughters to pursue education and career and whatever the hell else they want to do with their life. Not just getting married and having children, because we are so much more than that. We have so much to offer the world, but we self-abandon. And we remove our own goals and dreams and stuff because we got to get a man. The women I know that are sad because they don't have a partner. Before I met my husband, we've only been married a year almost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Y'all are still in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah. And so I had been married previously twice. My first husband passed away. And then like 10, 12 years later, I got married again. And he was a great stepfather, and we're still very cordial with each other. You know, when we lost my oldest daughter, grief changes people.
Yeah.
And so we grew apart. And this was kind of in my transformation phase. So we grew apart, perfectly fine. But then I dated that narcissist. And he targeted me in my time of grief because his son was actually one of my students at the church. And he passed away in a car accident. And so he used my grief to target me because he knew I was weak at that time. I really was. I've had people in the past ask me, how could you date someone who's abusive and narcissistic? Because I was a shell of myself at the time. I literally was barely surviving, or existing. And so But after that, I had vowed I was never going to get married again. I had no interest, was not looking for a partner. I built a house by myself. I got 2 promotions at work. You know, I was doing the damn thing because I was building the life that I wanted, not the life that the church told me I was supposed to have, or society, or any man, what I wanted. Well, then I met him, and he's the most amazing person ever, and 1,000,000% supportive of how I show up in the world. And so I was like, all right, we'll get hitched. And he's amazing. He's, you know, when I go to a protest, he wants to be right there with me. And when I go, I've got a couple things lined up that I'm going to go to learn about the legislation, and going to the prison committee meeting. Like, he's like, I want to be with you. I want to learn with you and grow with you. And so that's what it's about. It's about a partnership. You know, our relationship's very egalitarian. Like, he cooks, because you're not me, baby. I'm not your slave. So everything is split. But the number of women that aren't willing to go through that period of building the life they want. They self-sacrifice to have a man because it's what they're taught. So frustrating.
I wanted to ask you, were you cognizant, were you aware of the Turning Point USA event at Auburn University, and like how well attended that was by young women?
So I know it was a large gathering. I try to steer away from fixating on specific things because I can get overwhelmed. So I didn't look into the actual event, but I do know that it was well attended by college-aged women. And again, they're spewing that message of...
It seems to me they're trying to get them as early as possible.
Hell yes.
That they understand that we as humans are not born. We don't see color. We're not born racist.
All of it's taught.
Yeah, it's all taught. So that's what I see is kind of going on. It's like, you know, society to these old white men like got well out of control. They started seeing themselves shrink in population.
Yes.
You know, shrink in
Power.
influence and power. Yeah, so they're freaked out.
Yes, and you know, our prefrontal cortex, our decision-making part of our brain, does not fully develop until around 26 years old. That's why your car insurance goes down.
Yeah.
And remind me to get back to my point, but let me say this about being a woman in Alabama. I was notified that my car insurance would go down if I allowed my agent to put married. I said, do what? Yeah, it'll go down if you put that you're married. I said, so I'm punished economically, financially, for being a single woman. As if a 47-year-old woman can't drive. I need a husband to tell me how to drive, and I'll get lower rates. That is a fact.
Oh my gosh.
That is a fact. So where was I?
Well, I think we covered it. I really want to get your thoughts on this contraception because, you know, I at least can understand how or why they're going after abortion, but for contraception, I'm just like, what's wrong with y'all? Because I think it's very fair to say that these people are not necessarily pro-life. They're pro-birth.
Absolutely. They are scared of the white population declining. And I know that might sound like hyperbole. And I know it might sound like I'm just bullshit. They are scared of the white population declining because it is.
Yeah.
You know, people are more diverse now,
They're blending. There's a lot of blended families.
Yes, and mainly because people are sick of white men shit. I'm just going to be honest with you. So they're branching out.
But it seems like after somebody is born, it's just like, well, you're on your own.
We have 5,000 plus children in our foster care system in the state. These people are not pro-life. They are supporting a president who wanted to cut SNAP, who did cut SNAP, you know. you're pro-life. You don't want people to eat.
Well, that's all fraud. They don't need to be on SNAP. They're just lazy.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
If there is fraud going on, it's like a large crime network type thing. There are benefits that are stolen off of cards, but there are so many policies and requirements in place for someone to receive government assistance. Number one, let me state this as an absolute fact.
Okay.
Immigrants do not receive government assistance, okay? People that are undocumented do not receive government assistance. If they don't have a social security number or can provide information, verification that they are documented here legally, or whatever term you want to use, they cannot receive government assistance. That is a blatant lie. Complete, total lie. But back to the fraud. There are so many requirements and things in place that people have to do to receive SNAP and stuff. This fraud is ridiculous. And let me say this.
Okay.
Until you start paying attention to the fraud that is going on in that White House and that man has committed his entire life, shut the fuck up about fraud. Honestly, you cannot be a hypocrite about it. Like, if you're not going to hold him accountable, stop directing everything at poor people, okay? Because they're not the problem. They're not the problem. Billionaires are.
Politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and politics of
But America